May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. One of my favorite chaplains from the old days was also an Episcopal priest. And Father Noble taught us preaching as well as other things about worship in the schoolhouse for chaplains. One day he shared with us this story. He was trying to impress on his 5th grade daughter that our lives are built on sacrifices of other people and living things. So while they were eating dinner one Sunday, and she was just getting ready to eat that drumstick, he looked at her and said, "Honey, you know that chicken died for you so that you can live." I think that was the end of the dinner for her. In fact, that image of a hen dying may have been an image that was hard to get out of her mind. I wonder if she ever came to grips with it, or if she just became a vegetarian. But images are so powerful for us that story from 30 years ago still sticks with me. In our gospel today, Luke tells a very strange story. Jesus is in Galilee preaching, teaching, and healing. And remember, he has been up to the top of the Mount of Transfiguration, and that's the turning point for his ministry. He's now headed towards Jerusalem and to the cross. But he's taking his time. It's not exactly a sprint to get to Jerusalem. And these Pharisees come, and it's kind of strange. This is one of the few texts where Pharisees are seen in somewhat of a positive light. And they confide in Jesus. Herod wants to kill you. And so instead of just thanking them for the tip, Jesus starts out his message. Go back and tell that fox. And then he has somewhat coded language, I think. He talks about this 3 days sequence twice. I think he's pointing to his death and resurrection. He also describes his work in Galilee of preaching and teaching and healing as really something of defeating the evil one. Because the evil one has been sending demons, and so Jesus is casting out the demons. And in those days, casting out demons and healing someone from illness was basically the same thing. Then he completes his message to Herod and says that Jerusalem, ironically, is the place where God's prophets get killed. So he's going there. And then he names 2 animals, a fox and a hen. Now in Israel, foxes were just nuisances. They came and ate barnyard animals. Chickens were favorite dinners for foxes. So in this word picture, Jesus calls out Herod as a predator. And by implication, he's also pointing something to himself. He's pointing to himself. He's uniting himself to a hen, to a mother hen who gathers chicks. Now, why in the world would Jesus choose that? I mean, don't we want an eagle maybe, or a lion? Just not some barnyard bird. And what could a hen do if attacked? I probably should have checked with Amy and Gloria. They have chickens. So after this service, let me know if I got it right. But from what I have read, the only defense a hen has is to gather her chicks under her wings and then basically to become defenseless and to offer up her chest to these tearing teeth. The main defense of a hen, it would appear, in protecting chicks, is to become dinner for the fox and hope that he's full so he won't pick on the little ones. Now this image of this defenseless hen flapping her wings, baring her breast to the fox, is the image that Jesus gives to us to share what is behind this threat, the real, true threat. It is true. Herod was party to Jesus' death, as were others. But the real spiritual predator, the evil force, was the puppet master behind the scenes, choreographing this very strange contest. So if Herod was the fox, then the Satan was a roaring lion seeking to devour. I don't think that we will ever comprehend the mystery of Christ's sacrifice for us. We may never understand how the image of a hen flapping helplessly against the fox or the outstretched arms of Christ on the cross is in any way helpful for the human condition. We may never understand why God's response to many of the problems and losses of our life, he seems to do nothing. For many who suffer, their image of God is no longer one of a strong, capable, lion-like presence. Instead, God appears to be a hen flapping her wings against inevitable destruction. Strangely, for many of us, it's enough. It's enough that God is present and does not shrink away when we suffer. It is enough that God enters our human struggles and suffers with us. It is enough that God responds with sacrifice rather than violence. It is enough that when we accept this helpless, flapping response, our hearts are strangely warmed. Yes, it is enough because it changes our lives and the way we love others and God. We have lots of images in our minds of defenseless people suffering at the hands of the mighty. We only need to turn on the news and we see the Ukrainians being pummeled by Russian tanks and missiles. And in our memories, we hold many memories or images of things that have happened in our lifetime that have changed the course of society and of history. So do you have any images that you have experienced personally that are very profound in shaping you into who you are? I'm just going to close with sharing one of mine. Many, many years ago, I stood in a crowd of middle schoolers and watched Ricky Moorfield being beaten by bullies in the locker room. It seemed like every week one of the bullies would goad him and pull him out for sport until he came out swinging with the Moorfield punch. And we would just dissolve in laughter. But then the laughter would turn very nervous when these bullies then taught Ricky a lesson. Quite a few years later then, I read an article about Ricky in our local newspaper in Washington, D.C. He started college, stayed in the D.C. area. The reporter shared with us that his father was taken hostage by the Ayatollah Khomeini. Remember that? So he was one of the hostages, and then finally he came home after many years, and the family was just regaining some sense of normalcy. Ricky worked in a fast food place, and one evening several gunmen emerged from hiding in the men's room. They took all the money, they made all the employees lay face down on the cold storage locker floor, and then they shot them in the back of the head. At the age of 20, Ricky's young life, a tragic life, was over. And I regretted every moment of standing by silently in the crowd as I watched his helpless, flailing hands try to defend against bullies. I regretted watching, I regretted laughing. And I determined that in the future, if I ever saw such a thing, I would stand up for others like Ricky and intervene. And then it occurred to me, the disciples who had scattered when Jesus stretched out his arms and bared his chest as a sacrifice, they also regretted later their cowardice. Each one of them determined to live courageously and sacrificially, just like their master. And all of them, except for John, did become martyrs. What is it about Jesus that changes us so profoundly? How can the image of a hen flapping provide us with the inspiration to want to walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself for us, an offering and sacrifice to God? I dare not explain the mystery of the cross, but I can describe its effect. It makes no sense, but the breaking of Christ's body changes our hearts. We see power and we see violence from a new perspective then. We enter a new way of relating, wanting to help the weak and defenseless. It's as though we've been reborn or had a spiritual heart transplant. And strangely, that image of Jesus on the cross is enough, making us want to live and love differently. Amen.